Rain today, high 53. And there's going to be some wind this afternoon. And I don't know about anybody else, but there's like an umbrella that I have that whenever I forget and leave like a lawn umbrella, leave it up. But it was nice enough over the weekend to be able to have that thing up. So I'll leave it up, and then the wind will kick in. Today it'll be clear across the property. Got to be careful. Bill is on in New Hartford. William, good morning.
Hello, Bill. I think that player Jeff is thinking about is Howard. Could it be Howard?
Frank Howard, yeah. I think so.
Howard.
I was saying Frank Howard. And
Andrew's getting Brown from somewhere. I don't know.
I don't know why. I think it is Frank Howard.
Yeah,
I don't know why I was thinking.
I don't know that there's a Brown on the... how about Bill, did you see Friday night after the big moment in the Gonzaga game where I think it was Benajay that had a big moment or who knows who it was. But they one of the players off the bench, the little white guy, came up and did like a chest bump with him and got plowed right onto the ground, right onto the court. It was the funniest thing.
I'm sorry, I guess I didn't notice that. I would have liked to have seen that.
It was very, very funny.
It's funny. I don't know who – I'm not sure who he is. I don't know the kid's name, but I've been to many games and seen him on the bench many times. I believe he's a senior this year.
Yeah.
He's probably played – I saw him play –
he played earlier on, and he took a couple shots, and everybody was rooting for him.
Yes,
and he didn't score. I don't think he scored.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Anyway,
he got plowed, knocked right to the court.
Bill.
Yeah.
They always say Syracuse only plays 7 guys. But you know that game against the game you're talking about, Gonzaga. You know how many players Gonzaga played that whole game?
How many?
6.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. All this time, everybody's like, well, Syracuse is not playing anybody. Dayton, whatever that other team was. Yes. And, Gonzaga is not all that good after all. Well, what do you say about Virginia?
Yeah, you can't say they didn't play anybody.
Can't take it away from them right now. There's no doubt about it.
It's an amazing run. We'll see if it keeps going.
Well, listen, it is the Cinderella story in college basketball right now.
Oh, yeah, really.
Yep. We'll see what happens.
Okay,
and, it's so apropos after what Boeheim has gone through and what that team has gone through.
Oh, yeah, he deserves all this.
No doubt about it. All right, Bill, thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Good time right now. I mean, you have until next Saturday. Is it Saturday at 8:40, I think, is when they're going to play?
Game. It might be even 9:40.
I think it's 8:40. I believe it's 8:40.
Yeah, and
right. So enjoy what you can right now because it could all end. But even if it were to end on Saturday night, what a run this Syracuse team has had. It's really quite exciting. But I don't know. I think it's going to go all the way. That's of course, my hope. On the line, Daren Martin. Here's an interesting little story that in California, there's legislation right now seeking to give parents time off for their kids' activities. This is true, Daren?
It is true, and it's a crying shame that we have to pass legislation like this.
That is true, I guess, because I got to tell you, I think that for instance, depends on your workplace. Like in this place, they're really good about when people have to do something, family. You don't have to go jump through hoops. Obviously, if, my kid's baseball game was going on between 6 and 9 in the morning, it might be a little difficult for me.
Right.
But for the most part, you get companies do it. We have to pass a law. We have to pass a requirement.
Okay, and you probably love the fact that the company does that, and it probably causes you to give so much more when you show up.
Right.
Here's the reality of what we're facing. And I talk about this in a company of owners. Gallup polls consistently show there's a 29% engagement level at your typical U.S. company. That means we're operating on about a third of our workforce.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is either we've got a lot of just, lazy workers out there. Surely 70% of the workers can't be like that. Or it's because we've created this, hey, you show up, you're here to punch a clock.
Yeah.
And, oh, by the way, I expect you to return an email at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night.
Right.
But if you need to take off an hour early to go to your kid's awards ceremony, you've got to jump through hoops to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a huge disconnect there.
It's interesting that I think anyway that we as humans, not just Americans, but as humans, we're generally genuinely good people. who are dedicated and somewhat loyal. I think most people are. But there's a little thing called justification. If you can justify, if someone does something to you, it then allows you to justify doing something back. So there's a cause and effect. So your company treats you poorly, and you don't put out. You don't give 100%, and you've justified that by the fact that they don't treat you well, right?
That is going on all across this nation, and I'm sick of it. It's time for a change.
Yeah.
That's why I wrote the book, Company of Owners. You don't want employees, you want owners. I was talking to my Uber driver the other day, and I said, listen, he had left corporate America.
Yeah.
I said, why are you driving for Uber? He said, because I can be my own boss. And I said, well, what does that mean? And he says, well, if I need to take off to go to my kid's game, I can do it.
Right.
Now, here's the reality. That same Uber driver, guess what time he's getting up in the morning? 4 a.m.
Right.
He's out working because he knows the connection between I got to bring my A game if I'm going to make some money, right?
Yeah.
We've lost that connection within most companies, and so consequently people are not showing up giving their best. And now we're having to pass legislation to give them permission to go do what ought to just be a human thing.
Dan,
go ahead, Derek.
What companies are doing it right?
Oh, Netflix, a lot of Richard Branson's companies. I mean, the companies that are doing it, you want to know the companies that are doing it right? Go look at stock prices for the most part and see what companies are thriving.
Yeah.
Hey, guess what? The Industrial Revolution is over.
Yeah.
That way of thinking about work is done. And you want an inspired, empowered workforce who are bringing their A game when they're there, and then you are celebrating when they're not there because you get that them going out and doing life and raising their kids and doing that stuff is just going to keep them more energized at work, not less.
It's funny. This isn't anything new because when you look back, I had someone just recently tell me a story about they worked in a factory as a kid, and they went in, and whatever the factory was, they made widgets. And he goes into the factory, and he's just working like crazy. He is working efficiently. He's working hard. And all of a sudden, one of the union guys calls him over and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm just doing my job. Am I doing something wrong? Yeah, you're going a little too fast. Now, that wasn't speed. That wasn't speed because he wasn't doing a good job. It's because now the rest of us are going to have to keep up with you. Let's slow things down. And they instructed him to slow down.
Oh, but those kind of stories just make my head want to explode. But I hear them more often than not.
Yeah,
and that's the reality of where we live now, which is, dumb it down, tone it down.
Yeah.
No, forget that. Actually, I wrote a Company of Owners because of a conversation I had with the CEO of an oil and gas company. I told him in the hallway, fire your employees. He said, "What do you mean, Mark? I can't fire all my employees." I said, "No, you want people who act like owners."
Right.
But here's the reality. If you have people who act like owners, if you want to have that, you have to treat them like owners. That guy should have been rewarded for going faster and been lifted up as, hey, let's all learn from this guy. But that's the failure of middle management.
And that was, and by the way, that was probably 50, 60 years ago when that happened.
It's still going on today.
And it's still going on today. Still. But I guess it, like in the business that we work in radio, it's all about if you do well, you advance. It's just if you don't do well, you don't work. You lose your job. And I've always grown up with that, so it makes it really easy for us. And it's also a very loose, where if you got to go somewhere and do something, you can go and do it. It's that atmosphere that we've always worked in this business, and
that's the way it should be. It's called a meritocracy, that you advance based on your merits and what you're doing, and we got to start focusing on performance instead of clock punching.
Now let me ask you this: there's a recent story about a carrier in would have been in Ohio or somewhere, not the carrier in Syracuse, but the same company, that he announced to everybody, "I'm sorry, we're moving all the jobs to Mexico, and oh, by the way, we want you to stay here and continue to do the great job that you're doing and work for another year. This is going to be a transition." I guess what I'm saying is the employees get spanked like this. They lose their livelihood, and how are they supposed to react?
So if you work in a job where you show up and do exactly what someone tells you to do, your days are numbered. Yeah. Those jobs are going away because they're being outsourced.
Right.
They're being turned over to a computer. And that way of thinking is going away very, very quickly. The people who are going to prosper moving in the future are the ones who really take ownership of what they're doing. They don't see themselves as working for a company. They see themselves as working for themselves.
Yeah.
And they bring that A game no matter who's, writing the paycheck. Those are the folks who are going to succeed because, I'm sorry, in the digital age, a lot of that, rote, repetitive stuff that I just show up and punch this button, that's being done by other people or by computers.
And, we're in a minimum wage issue here in New York right now where they want to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Those companies that offer that freedom, that are really successful and doing well, they're probably already paying their people more than $15 an hour.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They better be or they wouldn't be successful.
Right.
And, it's just indicative of the shift that we're going through right now. And it's a pretty big shift.
All right, Daren Martin, what's the name of the book is it?
A Company of Owners.
Okay.
It's actually been referred to by a couple of C-level folks as the best book I've read since Good to Great, which is pretty high praise in my mind.
Yeah, it's pretty good. All right, I'm assuming it's out there in all the book places and all that.
Yeah, just look up Daren Martin, Daren Martin, and you'll get right to it.
All right, Daren, thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you all. Have a fantastic day.
You too. Here's Christine with an update.